What is going on? It is Food for Thought podcast by RotoGrinders. It's week 2. It's already week 2. It's had so much anticipation for week 1, and now it's here. We've got a week in the books. We've got some information in the books. But most importantly, friend of the show. Not only friend of the show, friend in real life too. We've got Nick the Commish. He's coming on this week. Luch is out in the Cayman Islands somewhere having a good time. I'm just kidding. He is on vacation though. Commish, what's going on, my brother? How's everything?
What's going on, Chief? Week was good. Weekend was good, and now we get to do it all over again, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, for sure. And the one thing I do love about this podcast is, despite us nerding out at the end of the week, we just get to let our hair down and be sports fans on this podcast and just talk about a few things. The lines are out, or at least, some of the totals are out already. I'm sure some of those will adjust as we get a little closer to the end of the week. But, we're going to try to keep this podcast on the rails this week. Last week, we were off the rails. I think we went about an hour and a half or a little more than an hour and a half. We're not going an hour and a half this week, folks. I'm going to try to get us out of here in 45 minutes to make up for our overage last week, and we'll balance this whole thing out. So here we go, week 1. Biggest takeaway from last week. I think there are a few takeaways. What was yours?
My biggest takeaway is the Cleveland Browns are legitimate Super Bowl contenders if they can figure out right tackle. Jack Conklin, right tackle out for the season, torn ACL, MCL. That's going to be a potential issue, especially against teams that are adept at getting pressure. You think about the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 2. TJ Watt against a rookie right tackle could be interesting, but I was very, very, very encouraged by what the defense brought. I know the weather was bad. It rained the whole game, but the defense got after it. They got after the Cincinnati Bengals, and that was without Juan Thornhill, big safety acquisition from the offseason. The defense looks a lot better with new defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz. Most important, I think they have a lot more talent there. Last year, the interior of the defensive line was only there in spirit. They didn't really have a whole lot of talent there. The teams could run all over them, especially in third and short. So add in Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, add in Rodney McLeod at safety. Thornhill will be back. I think the defense is really deep, which is important. And the offensive play calling, I thought, was tremendous. Deshaun Watson missed a bunch of throws, and I'm willing to throw that out to the weather for week 1. We heard about the ball was heavy. It was wet. Those adverse conditions were a huge impact. But, man, if Deshaun Watson can make a few throws, the Cleveland Browns are a lot better than even I thought going into the season.
Well, listen, I'm going to piggyback that. As you know, I am not a Browns fan. I am a Carolina Panthers fan. I don't have this, I'm not in love with the Browns. But I think if anybody's been listening to me bang this drum in the offseason, the Browns have been my sneaky team all offseason. And a lot of it had to do with Deshaun Watson because I felt like he's going to play better. Let me tell you something. Look at what Joe Burrow did in this game. Like that's the other half of this takeaway. Do people realize Joe Burrow did virtually nothing in an American football game? Virtually nothing. Now, yes, I know he was coming off of an injury, but this Bengals team did not look good. And while Deshaun Watson probably didn't look great right out of the gate as I anticipated, I'm going to give him a pass with the weather. What he did do was make plays. Like, I think he had 30-something yards rushing on the ground, 30 between 30
45.
and 45 yards, rushed in a touchdown. Yeah. Like, that's going to – first of all, that's going to help just keep the defense honest anyway when they know, okay, Deshaun can still take off on us. But being able to score points, like when I look at what Cleveland did, not only did they score touchdowns, they were involved in the field goal game. Nick Chubb being able to rattle off over 100 yards in a game they needed him because the weather was so terrible. Like, think about the offensive line imposing their will on the like. And look, I know one of the offensive linemen is out, and that's, my God, Conklin being out just totally just awful. I mean, just awful. But they were still able to pull out the win. I'm with you. I like this one. Here's my biggest takeaway. I'm glad you brought up the Browns though, because that is my sneaky team this year. My biggest takeaway from week 1, this one may be sneaky, but I'm gonna roll with it anyway. What if the Jets are better without Aaron Rodgers?
This is our rabbit hole, Chief. I knew it.
You're not getting on this podcast without hearing about Aaron Rodgers. Listen to me, please, folks. I watched that game because I wanted to see how Aaron Rodgers would perform. Did you watch any of that game, Nick, by chance? Any of the game?
Yep. I missed the first series. I was coming back from practice, and
okay,
I saw the whole rest of the game.
Okay, so when you started watching the game, you were able to see Zach Wilson at quarterback.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So here's my question. Did the Jets win the football game?
They did.
Okay. Here's my biggest takeaway from week 1. The Jets never needed Aaron Rodgers to win. They need their defense to continue to be outstanding, and they need a quarterback that's not going to turn the ball over. That's all they need. They don't need some superstar to come in there and drag them to the finish line. Like, yes, I know that Aaron Rodgers is better than Zach Wilson conceptually. Don't get me wrong. I'm not an idiot, okay? Conceptually, Zach Wilson is nowhere near the quarterback of Aaron Rodgers. Part of that is because of Aaron Rodgers' tenure in the NFL. I'll never question Aaron Rodgers' mind in terms of football, right? Like that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is how much does Aaron Rodgers move the needle actually? See, we get caught up in Aaron Rodgers because he's the successor of Brett Favre, and he's won a Super Bowl. He's won a Super Bowl, and that was over a decade ago. So I don't want to hear this stupid stuff about Aaron Rodgers is so great. He's not. He's not. And guess what we saw last night? What I want you to do, Nick, is go back and watch that first series. Aaron Rodgers looks like he was about to get run over by a train. Now, that might not be his fault. That may be the offensive line's fault. But the point is, when you go out and you're a superstar quarterback, you're supposed to be a team elevator. All he did was elevate this team's cachet in the media. They weren't going to win that game last night with Aaron Rodgers. I can tell you right now, I watched the first series of the game. Yes, I know he got hurt. I'm not wishing anyone gets hurt, but this may have been the best thing ever for the New York Jets, and they don't even know it yet. Because now there's no excuses. You don't have to even depend on Aaron Rodgers to get you there. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to go out and play football. Aaron Rodgers is going to be a headline, but he's going to sit on the shelf if he's hurt, and they're going to say this team is one of the best teams we've seen. Not Aaron Rodgers saved the Jets. Because he wasn't about to save them. That series was going horribly, terribly. And the Jets still found a way to win this game at home on Monday night. My biggest takeaway is the Jets never needed Aaron Rodgers to begin with.
I would agree with you if it was anyone in the league other than Zach Wilson taking over for Aaron Rodgers. Because you know how I feel about Aaron Rodgers, and we talked about the Packers a lot earlier in the week, and I was pretty adamant, right? Like the Packers are better this year with Jordan Love than they were with Aaron Rodgers last season. So
say that again one more time. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you just say the Packers are better
this year?
Okay.
Yes, and honestly, I don't think it's particularly close, and that's it is disrespect to Aaron Rodgers, and I wish him all the best, getting healthy and all that, but it's just reality. It's just reality in my mind.
Yeah. My last thing here about Aaron Rodgers, Luke. The national media has made Aaron Rodgers out to be Tom Brady, and he's not, right? So I don't have anything against Aaron Rodgers, actually. What I hate is the media has turned him into some of the all-time greats, and he's not one of those guys. He doesn't – look, say what you want. Eli Manning was able to close the deal twice. Right? Say what you want. Dan Marino is regarded as one of the greatest of all time. He didn't even have a Super Bowl. So I'm gonna, I'll give him that. But there are plenty of quarterbacks that have been comparable to Aaron Rodgers that don't get the same level of respect, like Phillip Rivers. Because Phillip Rivers doesn't have a championship, he doesn't get the same level of respect. He's been equally as good throughout his career.
Yeah, I think my thoughts on Aaron Rodgers, I think he gets a lot of hype because he's obviously got a big arm. So he's going to make a number of flashy throws. And he throws the ball away a lot where other quarterbacks take shots down the field. They force balls into tight coverage. So his stats always look very good at the end of the season. He's going to have 35 touchdowns, only 5 picks, stuff like that. But the reality is there's been quarterbacks that have been significantly more productive and have impacted winning a lot more than Aaron Rodgers over the course of the last 10 or 15 years. And you mentioned guys like Phillip Rivers or like Matt Ryan comes to mind, Matthew Stafford, 3 Rams.
Yes.
And I think about those guys, and I think if you put them in Green Bay and you give them the resources that Aaron Rodgers had for the better part of 2 decades, how many Super Bowls would those guys have had? And I think it's at least 1. You give Tom Brady was in the NFC for 3 years, and he's got as many career NFC championships as Aaron Rodgers has. It's just crazy to me. And that's where I think your point isn't totally off base about the Jets will be fine. Last year, the Jets had one of the best defenses in the NFL, despite the fact that they really, really struggled to generate turnovers. We saw Jordan Whitehead had 3 interceptions on Monday Night Football. They forced a key fumble late in that game. Zach Wilson is atrocious. I mean, Zach Wilson, in my mind, it's hard to believe that he's in his 3rd year and he still looks as bad as he looked last night. But I will say he's mobile enough that if you can just convince him, hey, throw the football away instead of getting killed, holding on to it. I've never seen a guy run 35 yards behind the line of scrimmage just to complete a 5-yard dump off as much as Zach Wilson does. Right. But if they can simplify the play calling a little bit, my God, Breece Hall looked so good last night. Get the screen game involved, run the football with him and Dalvin Cook. You still got Garrett Wilson. Like, this is still a deep team. They don't have a lot of depth. So, like, injuries to other positions, especially on the defensive side of the ball, would concern me. But right now, like, I think they could go compete with 25 other teams in the league, even with Zach Wilson at quarterback.
Right. And that's really the point I'm trying to make. Like, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is moving the needle as much as we think. Especially, and I know it was just 1 series, but what I'm going back to is this is how Aaron Rodgers has looked the past 2 years. Like, dazzled, confused, blaming everybody else when he's on the ground. Like, hey, buddy, you get paid big dollars. Let's make it happen. All right. That's our biggest takeaway from week 1, because I don't want to stay in that and down that rabbit hole. Nick, what are you, and I do have some other ones, but I'm going to cut it off there. What are you looking forward to the most in week 2? I think there's some interesting dynamics there, especially with some of the performances we saw this week. What are you looking forward to the most, or seeing the most week 2?
I'm really looking forward to seeing Miami and New England on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah.
Miami, I'm a huge Mike McDaniel fan. I did not think they were going to go into LA and come out with a win in week 1, but I thought, because last year the Chargers were really the first team that was able to slow down that elite Dolphins offense. They did a lot of press coverage at the line of scrimmage. They were able to disrupt that rhythm and timing. But then Tua got hurt, and Mike McDaniel really never had a chance to counter the adjustments that started to happen around the league against that offense. But then, of course, you have that full offseason. And then you come back and Tua throws for almost 500 yards, throws a couple of really, really nice balls in important parts of the game. Tyreek Hill looks as good as ever. Jalen Waddle, Braxton Berrios. Like, the Dolphins lost their number 3 and their number 4 receiver from last year with Gesicki and with Sherfield leaving, but bringing in Braxton Berrios, and they got a couple other guys who made some nice plays against the Chargers. They got a lot of playmakers on that team, and Raheem Mostert looked pretty good. They're really well coached, and I think that defense is only going to get better and better as the year goes along. They don't have Jalen Ramsey right now. They're inputting a new defensive scheme with Vic Fangio there, and they still went into LA and beat a team that's supposed to be a Super Bowl contender, and they didn't have their left tackle Teron Armstead. So I'm excited to see what Miami looks like in week 2. I also thought New England played really, really well. Bill O'Brien coming in, taking over from Matt Patricia as offensive play caller. Who would have thought that the offense actually looked like an offense instead of a defense in week 1 against the Eagles? If New England didn't turn the ball over a couple of times early in that game and dig themselves a huge hole, New England probably comes out of there with the week 1 victory. And everyone's talking about how Mac Jones is back and that Belichick's going to have the Patriots in the playoffs. I know a lot of people were surprised that line was basically a field goal line coming out of week 1. But I think that's going to be a really, really competitive game. And I think New England has the pieces defensively to match up with Miami's speed really well. So I think that's going to be a really fun game to watch.
Yeah, I like that call. And let me just say, news just literally came while we're on this show, Nick, and you may have seen it already. Aaron Rodgers is done. Torn Achilles. And everybody kind of feared that anyway, but like we've got real confirmation now. That's it. He is done for the season. Man, I hate that for him, even though I don't think he has any real impact on them winning or not winning. But
wish him all the best with his recovery.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want anybody to be out because of season-ending injury. I'd rather you play and me judge you accordingly, not be out, because of that. So prayers for Aaron Rodgers. Sorry about that, man. And wow. Just that's a big one. So what I'm looking forward to the most in week 2 for me, and I do like that call with New England. I think it's going to get very interesting for that team if they continue to win in that division, because Buffalo just lost, and obviously the Jets are 1-0. And so, what if New England is now the new splash team in that division and nobody saw it coming? That's very possible considering the circumstances. And I think something else on the other side of that Jets games last night. I know the Jets defense is really good. Can we still trust Josh Allen? Story for another day, but I'm gonna put a pin in that. Hopefully we can get you to come back and let's talk about that. Josh Allen is starting to scare me a little bit. If you just watch it, he's really starting to scare me in terms of he's talented, but the decisions, it's really
37 turnovers in his last 19 games, Chief. I'll come back and talk about that anytime you want.
Yeah, that's starting to scare me. So what I'm most looking forward to personally in week 2 is this. So we got news that Chris Jones has now signed a 1-year deal. And I can't overlook how important that may or may not be right now for the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, he's got to come back, probably get in some type of game shape. I'm sure he's been working out, but football is a different. You still need to be in game form. I don't think he's quite in game form, but I do think he'll probably play this week. Does Travis Kelce take the field this week? We shall see. What I think is interesting for me in this particular game is you got Trevor Lawrence and the shiny new toy in Calvin Ridley, but he's also still paired with Christian Kirk. He's still paired with Zay Jones. He's still paired with Evan Ingram. We've still got Travis Etienne there. And while I didn't pick this team to win a division, this team could possibly be 2-0 just because they have the talent to keep up with Kansas City this week, especially if Kelce doesn't play. And if Kelce doesn't play, the Chiefs may not have enough with Chris Jones there. This is a very interesting dynamic for me because, and this is something I talked about in week 1, injuries can derail anybody's season. Doesn't matter what team it is. It can just blow it all up. And so this Kelce injury right before week 1 blew it all up for them in week 1. That's, I was picking Detroit anyway, but after the Kelce injury, I figured Detroit's going to win that game. So they're 0-1. And right now I feel like they're already 0-2. Now, everybody's got to strap up. Everybody's got to play the game. But in terms of pure talent, a 70% Kelce isn't going to help Patrick Mahomes beat this Jaguars team, I don't think. I think Chelsea's got to be 100%. Chris Jones just coming back, probably not going to play 100% of the snaps. I don't think that's going to slow down this Jaguars offense enough for them to win. So what I'm looking forward to most in week 2, do we see improvement from Kansas City right, to give us an inkling that they're still going to be a playoff contending team? Or do they come out and lose this game, right? And then you start looking ahead and you're saying, well, they didn't win that game. Week three they play the Bears. They'll win that game, right? They should win that game. They'll be 1-2. But then they have to go play the Jets. My point to this whole scenario is if they lose this week, by week 5, they're less than 500. That's guaranteed. There's no way, like, Patrick Mahomes isn't going to just be able to skate by the Jets this year. They're going to be a problem. Maybe the Jets go and try to get Mike White, pry him away from Miami and say, hey, man, come on back. We need you. The Jets may make another slight move. At this point, I'd be comfortable with Jacoby Brissett in a Jets uniform. Oh, seriously, he'd probably have this team in the playoffs. I'm not exaggerating. These are facts. My point is the Chiefs could very well be under 500. And so what I'm looking forward to most week 2 is, do we see any ounce of hope out of this team that's pretty much been the top team in the league for the past 4 or 5 seasons? Or is this the beginning of the end for the Kansas City Chiefs?
It's going to be interesting to watch. So one note that I had in my RotoGrinders article ahead of that Lions matchup in week 1, across the last 5 seasons, the Chiefs have led the NFL in pressure rate with Chris Jones on the field. When Chris Jones is not on the field, 28th out of 32 teams in the NFL. So Chris Jones is obviously a huge presence, but like you said, the last 5 years, he's been in game shape every time he's been on the football field.
Yeah.
And when you're negotiating a contract, like, the motivation is just not there, right? In Chris Jones' mind, like, you're not with the team, you're not using the facilities. There's a lot of stuff going on off the football field. So who knows if he's been working out as much as he's been working out. He definitely hasn't been on the football field doing those types of workouts. And people don't realize as well, they lost Frank Clark this offseason.
Yeah.
We mentioned Juan Thornhill going over to the Browns. It's not the same Kansas City Chiefs team that went to the Super Bowl and beat the Eagles this past February. It's just not. And at receiver, I'm always a proponent of, like, you don't need elite number 1 receivers to win football games, but you need guys who are going to catch the football when it hits them in the hands. Sky Moore's not that guy. Kadarius Toney wasn't that guy, at least on Thursday Night Football. If Travis Kelce isn't there, I mean, Mahomes couldn't have played a better football game on Thursday night. Even that 4th and 25, where everybody's like, why are the Chiefs going for it? That ball hit Sky Moore in the hands and he dropped it. That would have been a first down, and maybe they are 1-0. If he can make one play in the course of a football game, maybe they're 1-0. So I'm with you, man. The Jaguars, worst team in the NFL last year defending the tight end position, so I think it is a huge deal whether or not Kelce plays. If he plays, maybe I believe in the Chiefs a little bit more. But I'm with you. I think that they could really be struggling to get to 10 wins if they can't find a way to win this week and be at 3-2 after 5 weeks, like you said.
Right. And that's really my concern. Like, it's kind of the look ahead with them. Like, here's my thing. What I will say. By the time they get to the Jets in week 4, Zach Wilson may or may not be the quarterback. Like, we saw this last year. Like, look, this team needs to win. The defense is built to win, and all they need is a quarterback that's not going to turn the ball over. Like, that's all they need. That's it.
And Chiefs, and they're going to get that first round pick back because Rodgers isn't going to meet his playing time threshold. Yeah. So I'm interested in is a guy like Kirk Cousins on the table? I'm just saying.
Right. If you put Kirk Cousins in this Jets offense, there will be turnovers, but there will be plenty of points. Yep. Listen, you can say what you want about Kirk. Kirk's put up points and yards wherever he's been. Washington, just look at the numbers. The numbers and the points are there. Now, whether or not Kirk can close the deal and not have a turnover late in a big game, the cost in the game, TBD. But during the season, points and yards will be there with Kirk Cousins. I'll leave it at that. All right, so that's what I'm most looking forward to in week 2. We're going to hop back into week 1. We talked about our biggest takeaway from week 1. What was your most impressive performance from week 1? I've got a good one for this one. What was your most impressive performance?
Okay, I'm going to cheat a little bit because I'm going to pick one offensive guy, one defensive guy.
Sure.
Defensively, it's got to be TJ Watt. The guy was relentless against the San Francisco 49ers team that, by all accounts, is just as good as they were last year, if not better. But Mike got 3 sacks, 5 quarterback hits, 2 forced fumbles in week 1. Now he gets to take on a rookie right tackle, like we talked about at the top of the show. TJ Watt, it almost, like, I'm not a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I'm a Dolphins guy, honestly, at this point. I've always been a huge Tom Brady fan, so I've rooted for him wherever he's gone. But now I'm kind of left aimless without a team. But I'd like Mike McDaniel, so I think that's my new team.
Yeah.
So I don't have like a dog in the fight, but TJ Watt is just so fun to see take the football field every week, and he has such an impact on the game that it's almost sad that he can do what he did on Sunday and his football team lose by 3 or 4 touchdowns. So I mean, I'm rooting for that guy to keep having sustained success. I think he's a heck of an athlete, and hopefully Pittsburgh can do something to keep him in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. Offensively, it does have to be Tua. I mean, coming off of a season in which everybody was like, "Oh, should he play football again? Should he retire? We're worried about his head." He did some unorthodox training in the offseason with judo, trying to fall better, strengthening his neck muscles, things that are not common practice in the NFL. He comes out. He made all the easy throws that Mike McDaniel schemed open for him, which you have to do. It's an underrated part of being a great quarterback.
Right.
But some of the throws that he made down the field, he hit Tyreek Hill on a 3rd and 10 down the right sideline on the run. He stepped up in the pocket, threw off a one leg, just chucked it up there. I mean, he laid it in perfect between 2 defenders. The throw he made to Tyreek Hill, the game-winning touchdown, you could not have thrown a better football.
Right above the defender. And let me say this too. With that particular play, one of the things that I loved, because this is how you know great receivers, right? Tyreek didn't give the defender any indication the ball was coming. He literally, he barely raised his hands. Like, I don't think people understand that. Like, if he raises his hands, the defender just reaches up and knocks his ball down. Tyreek literally sits there and watches the ball come into the breadbasket. And I'm saying that to support what you're saying. If the ball is thrown anywhere else, he's got to move his hands against the ball. Tyreek just literally let it come into his body and just clutched it. Incredible way to close that game out. All right, I'm handing it back to you.
What about you, Chief? No, you tell me. What were you most impressed by in week 1?
So in week 1, believe it or not, I was most impressed, wait for it, with the LA Rams. I thought, listen, everything coming out of the Rams camp was that this team was dead. This team wasn't going to win many football games, and they still may not, right? Watch this. Matthew Stafford can't connect with these young receivers. I don't know what's happened. It was, if you listen to the media, and this is why I'm trying to convince people on Aaron Rodgers so much when I come on the show, the media will lead you astray all the time. If you listen to the media, the Rams facility was on fire. Everything was burning to the ground. And they come out against Seattle and Geno Smith, who everybody thought, I thought the Seahawks would have run away with this game somehow. And all Matthew Stafford does is take this young, terrible receiving core, right? But I mean, he's got the new guy and Van Jefferson and Tyler Higbee and Tutu Atwell. I mean, and they win this football game. Now, they get the 49ers this week, which they'll probably lose. But I think the biggest takeaway is Matthew Stafford got it done when everybody said the facility was on fire. You've got his wife spilling the beans saying he can't connect. They win the football game, and they win by a pretty wide margin considering this the NFL. Like, the NFL to me is a 3-point football league. It's a field goal at the end of every game most of the time, right? You know, 3 to 7 points.
Close. I mean, they won the second half 23-0.
That's what I'm saying. They didn't just win this. They ran away with it. What in the world is going on in Seattle? I don't know, but that's my biggest takeaway. Matthew Stafford and the Rams got it done when all we heard was this team was on the way to outer space somewhere. Aaron Donald still looks like Aaron Donald, even with this defense supposedly being the worst defense they were going to see. Aaron Donald still out there making plays, and to close it out, this is the one that everybody's heard. It's been all over the news, social media. Aaron Donald comes around on a stunt or a twist. It might have been a twist. And Geno Smith is saying, oh, my God. I don't know if you've seen that clip. My goodness. Unbelievable performance by the Rams. And I think they're getting overlooked because there were so many other things that happened, like the Cowboys shut out of the Giants, which could have also made this list. But I just wanted to shout out the Rams because everybody said this team was done. This was supposed to be an 0-17 team. And they come out of the gate and win in convincing fashion. Incredible.
So let me ask you, Chief, how much of that win do you think is a reflection of the Rams playing well versus Geno Smith having 112 passing yards, Kenneth Walker being pretty meh? I mean, DK Metcalf had 47 receiving yards. No one else on the Seahawks had more than 17. I mean, where are you at, Tyler Lockett? I know Jackson Smith just got back. But so how much of that is like the Rams played well, we should be impressed by the Rams, and how much of that is Geno got his bag and now he's not interested in football anymore? And I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but you know what I'm asking?
Yeah. It's week 1. I don't want to overreact. I still don't think the Rams are great. But what I'm saying is the Rams, if you listen to everyone, aren't supposed to win any football games. And they come out and beat a team convincingly. Like, this wasn't a field goal at the end. This wasn't a Geno throws a pick so they get to kick a field goal. They won 30-13. That's not the makings of – if your offense is bad, even against a bad defense, it's hard to score 30 points in the NFL, no matter how you slice it. Kyron Williams is out there running all over the place. I know he scored a couple touchdowns, but my point is to say that this team was written off so bad. Matthew Stafford had 334 yards passing. That, to me, that's not the sign of an offense that can't score points. Tutu Atwell had 6 catches for 119 yards. Geno Smith doesn't play defense. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, Puka Nacua had 10 catches for 119 yards. But this team is supposed to be bad, Nick. Like, that's everything I heard.
But that's what I'm asking, right? I mean, we're trying to make sense of it. I'm also looking at 40 carries for 92 yards. I mean, that's probably not going to win a lot of football games, right?
No, it's not. But Matthew Stafford, 24 for 38, 334 yards. Once again, Geno can't play defense.
I'll play a lot of offense either on Sunday.
Yeah. I'll give you this one. If Matthew Stafford has 189 yards passing, and they scored 30 points on like 3 defensive scores, and Matt can't move the ball, okay, like this wouldn't have made my list. The reason this is making my list, Stafford 334. Now the run game was awful. Don't get me wrong. 334 yards passing for Matt Stafford this week. No touchdowns, but that's okay. 334. 2 receivers over 100. 10 catches for Puka. 6 catches for Tutu. 3 for Higbee. 4 for Van Jefferson. 1 for Bryce Hopkins. I can't overlook that type of output when this team was supposed to be buried from the start. What this says to me is while they probably won't beat San Francisco, they're going to win a lot more games than we thought. And if Seattle, it's week 1, I'm still expecting Seattle to be a better team than the Rams. Don't get me wrong. But in this division, if they win enough games, they may make the playoffs. It's possible.
So let me leave you with this, Chief, because this supports what you're saying here. The Rams and the Seahawks both had 9 drives on Sunday. The Rams had 426 yards of total offense. The Seahawks had 180. The Rams had time of possession 39 minutes compared to the Seahawks 21 minutes. The Rams ran 78 plays on offense. The Seahawks ran 46. If you can do that, especially against teams that on paper maybe have more talent than you, and I'm talking about teams like the 49ers and other teams that were already throwing up there as scheduled losses. If you only let them keep the football for 20 minutes and they run half as many offensive plays as you're going to give yourself a chance to win. And people forget, is a lot of that talent gone? Is Cooper Kupp on the IR? Right? Yes. They're missing a lot of pieces. It's not a team that's going to win the Super Bowl like they did a couple of years ago. Von Miller's not there. Jalen Ramsey's not there. Those boys are gone. Sean McVay is still there, who as recently as last year was widely regarded as one of, if not the best coach in the NFL. And that matters a lot in the NFL. I think even more than a lot of other sports. Coaching has a tremendous impact on what teams are able to do week to week. And I'm with you. I do think, like, if Matthew Stafford can look like this Matthew Stafford and not the one that we saw last year who was dealing with the elbow injury and obviously wasn't healthy, if Stafford can play close to what he looked like against the Seahawks, that raises the floor of this team a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And my last thing I'll say about this team, and I bet nobody probably thought we were talking about the Rams, but I thought it was very important to call out this team because of how most people had written them off. I saw a quote, Nick, that said this team was going to be so bad. They said, I don't even know these players. They said it's Aaron Donald and a bunch of XFL defenders. I literally saw this quote somewhere on the internet, and they come out and win this game. Kudos to the Rams for just getting it done. Kudos to the Rams. All right, we're moving here. Nick, this is going to be a favorite segment of mine today. Possible big performances for week 2. What are some possible big performances? But player, team, combination, could be a player and team. We got plenty of time, my man. So possible big performances week 2.
I'm taking the Las Vegas Raiders.
Stop it. See, guys, you don't know, me and Nick talk offline, and the Raiders were a team I was going to talk about coming up. So go ahead. I want to let you have this one. Go right ahead.
So I'm looking at these lines right here. Depends what book you're looking at. You can get the Raiders as much as plus 10 in this football game against the Buffalo Bills. The Raiders on paper, they don't look like they got a lot of talent. But people forget that this was a team that a lot of people had a lot of good things to say about last offseason. And it's not a totally different football team. And I think, if anything, you've upgraded at quarterback. You still have some pieces defensively. I still think Josh McDaniels is a pretty good coach. Like, I think now he's got some weapons offensively. You got Devontae Adams back, obviously, Jacoby Myers. Like, there's things, and I know Jacoby Myers got hurt, but, assuming he's able to play, but they have some nice pieces in Las Vegas. And you talked about Josh Allen, or you teased him a little bit earlier in the show. I've never been a huge Josh Allen fan. Obviously, he's got all the tools. He's got the big arm. He can make plays with his legs, which gives you a high floor week to week. And that's what I think, more than anything, if you're assembling a team in the NFL, you're looking to put together a team that has a high floor with a high ceiling. The problem in my mind with Josh Allen is he so rarely gets to that high ceiling, because last night, if you're the Buffalo Bills, Aaron Rodgers is gone in the first quarter. Josh Allen, you turn into a quarterback at that point where it's like you don't turn the ball over 4 times, and this game's not even a sweat. Even if we have to keep going down and kicking field goal, it's not the sexiest way to win a football game, but the field conditions weren't great after the storms that rolled through.
It was not.
It just feels like, there was a couple of shots downfield. Josh Allen threw 2 interceptions on balls where he had guys wide open underneath for first downs. Yeah. And if you go back and watch the film, it's like you don't need to hit the home run all the time, and especially in the context of that game script where you're going against Zach Wilson, a young quarterback who thought he was going to be able to sit back and just chill on Monday Night Football, watch Aaron Rodgers, play his first game with the New York Jets. And Josh Allen just doesn't have the awareness that I think a lot of people would like for him to have. Now, the Raiders, I think their linebacker core is pretty weak, so maybe Josh Allen is able to make a few more plays with his legs. Maybe Buffalo comes out of there with a win this week. But every week I do an article for RG and for the Survivor Leagues, and I pick one team that I think is by far the most trustworthy that you should lock in for Survivor if you have them left. And then there's one team that I put on upset alert. Last week, I had the Kansas City Chiefs. They opened as 6.5-point favorites. They were my team that was on upset alert. Of course, they lost to the Detroit Lions. This week, I haven't done the article yet, but I'm leaning towards the Buffalo Bills on a short week against a Las Vegas team that has a quarterback that's better than people think, that's better coached than people think, and that has a few players on the defensive side of the ball going against a Buffalo team that, by the way, their secondary is not that good. Now you got a head coach who's also the defensive coordinator, and people don't like it's the small stuff. Last night, not taking those, it ended up not biting them because they doinked in the field goal to force overtime, but not taking timeouts on the flip side of the 2-minute warning. They cost themselves a fair amount of time. Instead of kicking a 50-yard field goal, maybe you got a shot at the end zone or a couple of shots at the end zone on that final drive. You don't even have to go to overtime. So all of this is what my point is, that the Buffalo Bills, I do not think are anywhere as good as people think. I think they have a lot more flaws defensively, especially with Von Miller not playing to start the season. And the Raiders sort of, I mean, it was a 425 time slot, two teams that people aren't super interested in. 10-point underdogs in this matchup just seems like a lot to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you 100%. I like that call. The reason I was going to talk about the Raiders is I think Jimmy G just continues to be underrated. I think, when they sent him to San Francisco, everybody feels like you can just take any quarterback and plug them in the Kyle Shanahan system and it's going to work. So Jimmy kind of loses respect, right? Because it's like, oh, well, I mean, they don't need Jimmy. Like, they got Brock Purdy. Well, Trey Lance didn't work out either. So like Jimmy's been successful whenever he's been at offense. And his first game with the Raiders, game was close. Don't get me wrong. Like, he had to close the game out with the 8-yard rush for Denver to not get the ball back. But he did what he had to do to win the game. When the throws had to be made, the throws were there, right? Like the drive before the game clinching one, the throw to Jacoby Myers, the throw to Devontae on a crosser coming across these are all professional throws that you have to make when you want to close football games. Like, you have to make them. And if you can't, that's the difference between a win and a loss. And so Jimmy made the throws that he had to make when he had to make them. And not only that, game on the line, Jimmy gets the 8-yard rush. Those are professional quarterback plays. That's the reason they won this game. Jimmy doesn't try to force some throw. He takes what the defense gives him and says, hey, I'll just go get it with my legs, and we close this thing out and we go home with the W. That's professional quarterback play. Good call for sure with the Raiders. Here's something I'm most looking forward to. This is the team I'm most looking forward to this week. Maybe it's a surprise. Maybe it's not a surprise. I'm most looking forward to the Detroit Lions. And here's why. You can't come off of a big win against Kansas City and then let the Seahawks come in and win this game. If they lose to the Seahawks this week, this is going to make national media news. Because right now, I'm looking at Detroit's -5.5, right? And they're at home where Jared Goff typically plays much better. And we just saw the Seahawks get throttled by the Rams. This team has a lot more talent and name value than Los Angeles Rams, Nick. They better win this game, and in my opinion, it needs to be somewhat convincing. What I'm saying is, I don't think Jared Goff has to throw for 300 yards, but they need to have successful drives consecutively. Like, we don't need to see them struggle, and it's 3-3 at the end of the first half. That's going to give us pause for concern. I think we need to see something in the first 17-7 in the first half. I think is fine, right? Because once again, these are all NFL teams. I don't expect any games to be blowouts, but I think 17-7, 17-10. I think that's respectable, and I think by the end of this game, we need to see something around 24-10, 24, 14. It needs to be somewhat convincing so we can keep saying, okay, this team is coming, they're arriving. Because if they struggle with the Seahawks this week at home, I think that's going to give us some pause for concern with the team that we're expecting to continue to extend and be great now.
So let me ask you, I know you're telling me we need to see that. Do you think it's going to happen? Based off what you saw in week 1. So facts only. They won the football game 21-20.
Mm-hmm.
Jared Goff took care of the football when he needed
Absolutely.
to. He made a couple of throws when he needed to get first downs. So that was facts only. But now, what do you expect? Like, I know what you said you needed to see, but what do you expect in that football game against the Seahawks?
So I think this is a possible big performance spot. That's where I was headed. I think this is a possible big performance spot for the Detroit Lions offense as a whole. Let me tell you why. I think picking up David Montgomery was a very underrated pickup for them because so here's what Jamal Williams was last year. He was a touchdown monster, but more importantly, he was a veteran presence in a young running back room, in my opinion, right? A guy you could depend on, he was going to be a professional. Well, they were losing that, and they also lost DeAndre Swift, who had a lot of injury problems. So what did they do? They couldn't wait on Jamal. They were drafting Jahmyr Gibbs, drafted him early, but they bring in David Montgomery, a guy that's been in the league a little while, right? A guy that, as long as he's healthy, he's going to be a solid running back. He's going to be a professional running back in the league. Why am I bringing this up? For all of the young talent that they have on this team, you can't win with just the young guys, right? You got to have some veterans to keep the ship moving forward and help keep things in perspective. I think they've got the perfect mix of veterans and young guys on this team now. Sam Laporta is a young tight end, but you bring a guy back like Marvin Jones, who's been with the organization, been in the league, right? Can help keep pushing Amon-Ra St. Brown forward. Hopefully can help keep Jamison Williams out of trouble, right? David Montgomery helps Jahmyr Gibbs keep pushing forward. And you got Jared Goff, who's like kind of in the middle of his career now, possibly his prime. And they've got one of the best play action games in football. Because that's where Jared Goff excels, right? It's not just him dropping back, throwing for 50 million passes. It's they get going in this running game, and all of a sudden, Jared Goff is teasing him with the eye candy. He pulls it back, and we've got a guy running down the middle, and all he has to do is make the throws. He's going to make the throws this week. I think they're going to win this game convincingly because of the complementary football that they're going to play. I think picking up C.J. Gardner-Johnson gives this defense an edge, right? Yeah, he's chirpy and he's chattery, but he's going to back it up. He's going to make sure this defense has an elevated level of play. Have you seen teams when the defense is on the field making plays, the offense comes out juvenated? Hey, guys, we just got to go score points now. We don't have to take too many chances. Stick to our game plan. And then not only that, Dan Campbell, here's what I'll say about Dan Campbell. He's going to trust his team to win football games. Right. Hear what I'm saying here. And I'll parlay that into something we saw in the Thursday night game. They come out. Dan Campbell doesn't want a stale drive early, right? It's the psychological factor of his team. He said, no. We're not going to have a stale drive early. So what does he do? Fake punt on 4th and 1, 4th and 2, right? He plays aggressive, right? That's psychological. Like, I know we don't think about that in football, but that's a psychological boost for your team. Thanks, coach. You believe in us. Now we're going to go out and get this thing going. So that doesn't mean he's going to be going for fake punts every week. What it does mean is he has faith in his team to get the job done, and he's going to ensure that they stay aggressive. From what I've seen, if you stay aggressive with the Seattle team, and that's not just this year, that was last year too. If you stay aggressive, the Seattle have the horses, right, to not make those mental mistakes on offense and keep up. We've seen, and it's not just Geno Smith. We've seen DK Metcalf drop big passes late in games, right? Little things like that. I think they're going to keep the pressure on, and that's how they're going to win this game. I think it's going to be methodical. I don't think it's going to be big splash plays. I think it's going to be, once again, consecutive drives with points. Whether it's 7 or 3, they're going to continuously score points and slowly run up the scoreboard on Seattle. And by the time they get to the end of this game, it could be real ugly.
Yeah. It'll be fun to watch, man. I'm excited to see DK Metcalf in man coverage again. Last year had 7 catches for 149 yards against the Lions. So coming off of a down week, it'd be interesting to see that. But I'm with you. I think Dan Campbell, he's turned into somewhat of a caricature because of the hard knock stuff and just everything associated with the Lions going from poverty to perceived riches going into 2023. But there's something to be said about a coach who's willing to call. I was thinking the same thing before you said it, to go for it on 4th and short in your own territory or that early in the game. It establishes a certain level of trust with your players too, yes. Where then the players like, because I'm with you, like you don't want to steal drive, but then the players are like, hey man, like he trusts us to get this done. It's a yard, even though we're in our own territory. Like he knows we're going to convert, keep this alive, try to go put up some points. We saw it last year. He was the 6th most aggressive coach on 4th down. They played a high pace. They get in a healthy mix of play action. Jahmyr Gibbs, by the way. Oh my God! I know he wasn't on the field a whole lot, but he looked like a Ferrari.
Yeah,
because he looked like a Ferrari in college, but it's a whole different level of skill when you get to the NFL. And he still looked like a different cat when he was out there. And like you said, you got David Montgomery handling a lot of the stuff between the tackles. If you can creatively find ways to get Jahmyr Gibbs the ball in space, it felt like every time he touched the ball, he was 10 yards down the field against the Chiefs.
Seriously. And I think we'll see some of that this week. And I'm with you on Gibbs, right? Like, for as much as we love Tyreek Hill has like raw speed.
Yep.
Jahmyr Gibbs is like shooting out of a cannon. Like, Did you see that one? I can't remember if it was a catch or a run. He's coming down the sideline, freezes, spins, reverse, and it's like, my gosh, like just out of nowhere. I'm with you on Gibbs. I think he's big time. Here's my that's my big team of the week, Detroit Lions, right? Here's my big performance in terms of a player this week. I'm going with, let's call it somewhat of a bounce back spot. The one, the only, Daniel Jones. Hear me out here. Hear me out here. Here's why I'm going with Daniel Jones this week. I think it's only up from here after that throttling he took last week. Danny isn't going to throw for like 300 yards, but I think plus 200. I think he'll have 50 yards rushing in this game. Like, they can't hear what I'm saying. It's kind of like the reverse effect of the Lions, where the Lions can't come out and like win this game by 3 points. The Giants can't lose it, can't have another blowout like we saw Monday night. And a lot of things went against them. Like the Cowboys defense is supposed to be good. Don't get me wrong. But I think Daniel Jones, if he's going to have a big performance, it's got to be this week against Arizona. And I'm not a Daniel Jones fan, don't get me wrong. But for me, I'm always in look-ahead mode in the NFL because I think the look-ahead in the NFL is probably more important than any other sport because of the lack of games. But 2 games back, you lose 2 games in a row, that could just really set your season back. So I'm always in look-ahead mode. Here's why I think it's important. So they get the Cardinals this week. The next week, they get the 49ers. They better win this game because they're not winning next week. This team isn't going to beat the 49ers. I can tell you that right now. They're not beating the 49ers. So they have to get this game to stay alive because if they do and the Seahawks end up being bad, they get the Seahawks the next week, right? And then the week after that, they get the Dolphins, which they probably will lose, but they should be able to score points. My point is Daniel Jones is going to have to psychologically get ready to play well this week. And I'm expecting him to have a big performance against Arizona via the combo stats, rushing and passing. That's what I'm expecting from Daniel Jones this week. If we don't get it this week, Brian Daboll is officially out of New York.
Chief, I don't know if we disagree or not on this because you didn't.
It's because it's Daniel Jones. I know
you didn't exactly full send your vote of confidence in Daniel Jones, but I am short selling Daniel Jones as much as humanly possible. Last season, he threw for 15 touchdowns, had only 5 interceptions. I mean, he cut his interception rate in half compared to what he did early in his career. 2019 played 13 games, 12 interceptions. 2020, 10 picks in 14 games. 2021, 7 picks in 11 games. And then last year, all of a sudden, only 5 interceptions in 16 games. A lot of people, I think, were really eager to say, well, that's the Brian Daboll effect. You know, he didn't force him to throw deep. He didn't force him to do things that he was uncomfortable doing. So Daniel Jones took that next step. So it made sense to re-sign him. I think signing Daniel Jones to an extension, and I know it wasn't the richest contract in NFL history, but I think even giving him the money that they did, I think it was like $150 million, set this franchise back a decade. And the reason I will say that, whenever you see a quarterback cut his interception rate in half, or going the other way of like if a guy like Aaron Rodgers, we talked about, never throws interceptions, and then he has 1 year where he doubles his interception rate, almost always you're going to see that number come back to reality the following season, for better or for worse. Daniel Jones last year had 5 interceptions. He still had 17 interception-worthy throws, despite the fact that Daboll never let him throw the ball down the field. So yes, the Cowboys defense is great. The Cowboys defense, no defense in NFL history should be 40-0 great against a division rival on opening night where you have all the time in the world to prepare for each other. That was embarrassing.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Embarrassing.
Absolutely.
And now you're going to play a Cardinals team that they are completely devoid of talent. I mean, they have no talent on that football team, but they play hard. I noticed that in the preseason, and then I know a lot of people probably didn't have their NFL ticket set to the Commanders and the Cardinals week 1, but the Cardinals played tough, man. They're going to play with a lot of energy, and I'll tell you what, talent is going to win football games a lot in the NFL. It's going to win football games a lot more than effort will. But effort is going to force teams into costly miscues. They had a strip sack that they ran in for a touchdown that made that game a lot closer than the talent would have suggested.
Yeah.
I think we see it again. The Giants have children at cornerback. I mean, the secondary is so young. They're so inexperienced. And then you look at the offense, and it's like, what's to like here? You got Jalen Hyatt pretending to be Odell Beckham reincarnate, dropping passes, running poor routes. Like, I just don't think there's anything to like about the Giants. And I know you mentioned you like to look ahead at the schedule. Let's just humor me for a sec. Let's say somehow Arizona wins this game at home. San Francisco, that's a loss, 0-3. They get to host the Seahawks. Maybe they get a win there. We'll call it 1-3. But then they get Miami, Buffalo. They could be 1-5 going into Washington. Then they get New York, the Raiders, the Cowboys again. They don't have a bye week till week 13, and they really don't have any scheduled wins in 2023. Like, this team could be looking at potentially a top 5 pick.
They probably will. They probably will. Once again, the reason I'm giving Daniel Jones this game is for a lot of the reasons you said. Arizona doesn't have talent. And Daniel Jones played about the worst game of football he could have played Monday night. Dak Prescott didn't play well either, but they won the game, right? And that's so that's really what I'm looking at here in this situation. Like, when I look at Dak missed a lot of throws in that game. Like, CeeDee Lamb, he had CeeDee for a touchdown, threw it a little bit too high. Like, just missing throws, throwing Brandon Cooks on out routes, throwing it too high. Like, I don't know, what that was about. And I know they had the weather there too, right? Like, they had pouring down rain. So I'm giving him a pass because the defense created a lot of the momentum in that game for the Dallas Cowboys, which is going to lead me to my last one. This week, Dak's in trouble, and I'll leave it at that. Matchup with the Jets. Dak's in trouble this week. I'll close the show with that. Nick, do you have anything else you want to add? I know this was a slightly different feel for this particular show, but we want to give those segments, and Luch will be back this week. Anything else you want to say before we close this thing out?
I think my final thing that I would advise people to look at this week is I would take a strong, hard look at Justin Jefferson unders this week. I know everybody loves Jetta. I know Jetta looked real nice in the first half against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's going to be a different level for him against the Philadelphia Eagles on Thursday Night Football. And I will say, as much as people like Justin Jefferson and as athletic as he is and as good, as strong of hands as he has, he does not like to get down and dirty against these cornerbacks. He likes his free releases. He likes being schemed open, and he does a lot of damage after the catch, which is a valuable skill.
Yeah.
But it's different going against guys like Darius Slay. It's different going against the defending NFC champions. I think he could be in prison. I think he could be bullied a lot on Thursday night. I think I saw his opening line at like 96, 97 and a half receiving yards. As soon as we get off this show, I'm going to take a long, hard look at that, and I would recommend other people do the same.
All right, folks, you heard it from the commish, the man, the myth, the legend himself, closing this thing out with fire, telling us all, take a long, hard look. Wait, that means you need to get in on it now at Justin Jefferson Unders. I'm Chief. That's the commish. This has been Food for Thought, week 2. See you next week, everybody.